Hello, and welcome to the 8th meeting of the Top Shelf Society. I'm Kristin from Perks of a Bookflower, and today we are here to discuss the Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. We have lots of great discussions that we'll be having, but first, like usual, we want to introduce our members. So, like I said, I'm Kristin. My channel is Perks of a Bookflower, and I read basically everything, but I really like these days historical fiction and literary.
Hi everyone, my name is Ysenia. That's my channel name as well. I have recently kind of switched my content a little bit. I don't consider myself just a booktuber anymore, but right now I'm really enjoying fantasy. I've been reading a lot of fantasy and romance.
I'm Laura. My channel is Laura Reads Pages, and I read everything, but I read historical fiction, literary fiction, classics. I read everything.
Hi, I'm Angela, and my channel is angelarosereads. Same as everyone else, I read everything, but my favorites are fantasy and sci-fi.
Hi, my name's Sara, and I read with my cat, Olivia. And we like to read different things and learn about the world and how to be better people and cat. So, yeah.
Nice. I don't think Olivia could be a better cat.
True.
She's reached her top form. Okay, well, we have been doing a thing recently where we start off and we kind of predict who is going to say this is a top shelf read. So do you guys want to start off doing that?
I actually think, I have a feeling that we're going to be like, this is going to be the book where we're least divided.
I know. I kind of think it's going to be, well, I don't think Angela liked it. I think everyone else liked it.
Is it because what I was messaging you about, like, what just happened?
Yeah, kind of. And also, I mean, I don't know. There are bits of it that really frustrated me. So, and I feel like that could have really frustrated other people so much that they ended up thinking it wasn't a top shelf read.
I still think we're going to all be close. Yeah,
I don't.
We'll see.
I don't think there's going to be anything drastic like that you actively disliked the book, but I don't know. I could be wrong.
I think Sara is going to
read to chapter, what was it, 13?
Me? Was it chapter 13? I just remember there was a chapter and I had read it very early in the month and no one else was there yet. And I was like, I need to talk about this with someone. What the heck just happened?
There are a lot of moments like that in this book, like things that just got like a big reaction out of me, like surprises and things like that.
Are there really? I'm so curious to I think, yeah, I'm curious to hear.
Okay, so let me try to think. We normally try to do a little section that doesn't have spoilers or anything like that. So I'm trying to look in my outline and see what we could possibly discuss that wasn't spoilers. Have any of you read Circe, the other Madeline Miller book? I have. Okay, and Sara, right. So which do you think you like one more than the other?
I think I preferred Circe. I think I could tell reading Circe that it was her second novel as opposed to her first novel. I really like the writing in both of the books. I don't know if I talked about Circe. I read it at the beginning of 2020 and then talked about it all through 2020. So in my mind, it's kind of been put on a pedestal. So it's hard to compare them because I read Song of Achilles more recently. I did enjoy both of them, but I think I liked Circe more.
What about you, Sara?
So it's interesting. I had very, very strong opinions about Circe. Most notably, the first third, I want to say, I didn't like. I wasn't a fan of. I was like, I could totally do without this. But I loved the ending of it and the like later like 2/3 of the book so much that I wanted to give this 5 stars, but I just couldn't because of the first little bit of it. This book is just, it gets so good the longer you read it. And there's just one point in it that just totally turned it right around for me. Now, with the Song of Achilles, I had kind of a reverse feel towards it, if that makes sense. I liked the first 2/3 more than I liked the last third.
Did anyone else feel that way?
I actually felt the opposite. Like, I thought it picked up in the second half, but I wasn't upset with the pacing, if that makes sense. I just felt like there was a little more action in the second half. I appreciated the buildup of the first half.
No. I feel like the difference between Circe and Song of Achilles is Song of Achilles, it's really like centered on the action. Circe's like off on an island away from all of these myths where like Patroclus is right at the center next to the hero. So it's like Ysenia said, it's more centered on the action and like, so maybe like faster plot than Circe.
And I like a quieter novel, like a more kind of introverted, like character-focused novel. Mm-hmm. And I loved how in the beginning of Song of Achilles, I felt like it was more focused on, okay, do we want to get into spoilers now or do we still want to wait?
We're going to have to get into them at some point.
It's really hard to not.
Let's just do it.
All right, here we go. Spoilers.
7 minutes
now.
in.
If you haven't read the book, bye. We love you. Okay. So, when they start falling in love, and it's like just their time spent together, walking around in the fields, and with Chiron, whatever his name is. I just loved how like sweet that was, and then everything falls apart near the end, and it felt wrong, and all the I don't know. I didn't like the second half as much as the first.
See, I think I knew it was going to happen because I'd read up on the myths before I read it. So like I knew the point that we were coming to. I knew that they were both going to die and I knew in what order. So every time they were saying like he has this destiny and Patroclus was kind of assuming that he would outlive Achilles, like I knew that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, I felt like the end felt a lot more like other Greek stories that we've read. And then the beginning felt, like a great romance novel. Basically, like it was fabulous. And then it moved into what I felt, the Trojan War and everything. It made sense for the Greek part.
I kept waiting for Achilles to get shot through the heel.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh, I won't keep going. But I had like serious thoughts.
No, tell me. Yeah, because I was so confused by it.
I was like, what the heck? Like the whole time I was reading and I was waiting for him to be shot in the heel. And I just couldn't believe that didn't happen. And because I was like, I need to know more about this. Like it's in medicine, it's the Achilles like tendon. Like, come on, that's why I'm here. Like,
literally the only myth regarding Achilles that I knew, which was like his mom when he was a baby held him by the heel and dipped him in the river and that like gave him protection. But they just didn't. There was one tiny mention of that. Like I can't remember. There was one tiny mention, but it was literally the only thing I knew about Achilles, and it wasn't part of it at all.
I like watched an interview with her because I couldn't handle it like after like that happened in the book. And I was like, I need to understand her justification for not doing this. So I watched an interview to calm myself so I could get some sleep because I finished this last night. So then I like watched the interview with her. And she just kind of says that in the Iliad, apparently it doesn't happen like that. And that's a myth that has been brought forward. So she was like trying to combat that myth a little bit. And also she mentioned that she didn't want Achilles to be like this sort of like almost like mythical like character where he was invincible for everything except for the tendon. And she also said that she didn't buy the myth about Thetis like dipping him into the like water and like missing the heel. She's like, if that was my son, I would not overlook that. So she just like didn't like include it. And I was like, that kind of helped me come to terms with it. And I think I'm at a better place after watching that.
Yeah, I also researched it and found the same thing, that like in most of the tellings, including in the Iliad. Well, actually, I don't even think anyway, in most of the tellings, that's not that the Achilles heel part of the story isn't a thing.
Yeah,
but I guess it just has a lot of prominence in culture because of the Achilles heel. Maybe, I don't know.
Isn't it funny that it's funny though that that's like where we most know about it, and yet that wasn't even in Homer's like original stories. And in my book, I had like like some extra notes. So I was reading, I was like, okay, I got to find out what this whole thing about Achilles was. And yeah, she said basically that she was most influenced by Homer's writing, and that wasn't in the original. Also, we have to say hello to some people. Yeah. So hello. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. And hello. Good to see you. And
Good point.
I suppose not.
Point well taken.
Honestly, yeah, most of us do know the story of Achilles. Okay, so we discussed that, and then I did have a couple questions. First, about the title. So it's called The Song of Achilles. Why do you think it's called The Song and not the book or the poem or something? The battle.
I cheated, so I know.
I never even thought about that, to be honest.
I was thinking about it this morning. I have like a definitive answer that I'm willing to. I don't know. I might adhere the reasoning.
Well,
I know he had the lyre that he was always playing.
I'm going to guess that it's because at the end, Patroclus wanted him to be remembered not only for his like acts of heroism on the battlefield, but also for acts of generosity and for like other parts of him.
Well, that's a beautiful reason.
And like maybe like the fact that he was good at playing the lyre.
Yeah, because I don't know. At the end of the story, it's hard for me to come up with lists of good things about Achilles. I don't know how it feels for you guys.
Totally.
Yeah, there's not much that even like redeems me about him. But Patroclus loved Achilles and was able to see all of his softer sides, like his kind of musical qualities that don't really mix, I guess, with like a man who was supposed to be the Aristos Akine, the lead fighter of Greece.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
I have a hot take about their relationship though that I'm sure we'll get to.
Yeah. Hear it now.
Because I was yelling at Achilles a lot by the end of this novel.
Totally.
I was like, okay, dude,
Totally.
like, get it together. But I almost feel like Patroclus was kind of blinded by his adoration and love for Achilles, because he always showcased these kinds of personality traits and qualities from the very beginning, right? From the very beginning of him seeing him and being like, I want this boy because he's surprising. Like that's how they even connected in the first place, was he said, I want you. It wasn't like maybe that's just the way that I took it. It wasn't like
No, you're right.
like.
What's what's beautiful about it is that how, like, in terms of Patroclus and Achilles, and how Achilles, how he went forward and his decisions and everything, that is a little bit addressed in this for a scene, and I didn't remember it until I saw that interview by Madeline Miller. It's pretty good. And she sort of discusses ultimately like what they wish would have happened. And I want to like look back in it and see that scene specifically. I think that, like, Ysenia, what you said is right. Like, I mean, how do you not fall in love with a god? Like a god, like mortal, when they're just like right in front of you and you can see them do like amazing feats and also express their like love towards you as well. Like, I think that's
I'm gonna play the devil's advocate a bit and say I don't think Achilles was a great guy, but I didn't think he was irredeemable. And I think that he, like, at the end, Patroclus sort of wanted him to be remembered for the ways in which he did, like, he had this destiny. He was always born to become a hero. He was meant to do all these things, and then he went on and did them. And, like, at the end of the day, all of those things were kind of, you know, questionable. Like, you know, he was like born and bred to kill people basically, and then he went on to kill people. But I think there were like some small ways in which he was able to do something that wasn't part of his destiny, or that wasn't part of what the gods had like foreseen for him. And I think like at the end of the book, that's what Patroclus wants him to be remembered for, like for returning Hector's body and for the relationship that they had with Patroclus, even though like his mother didn't approve of it, and for like kind of ways in which he didn't like completely follow the sort of archetype that he was like meant to fall into, I guess.
I think separate from his relationship with Patroclus, I mean, we still deal with this, not deal with it, but it's still a big part of life to this day, but even more so back then when you had gods and stuff. It's your legacy and what you leave behind. And I think that I really, as much as I could not stand the choices he was making and how he was behaving in the latter part of the book, when he realized, like, I'm going to die, and I can be this way or I can be this way and be remembered for all of time, I kind of understood how he did then mistreat Patroclus and then everyone in the war too, in the camp and stuff. But you know, when you're facing like something that's happening in the present versus what you're going to be remembered for forever, he kind of cared a bit about that. So, I mean, I can't really fault him for that.
And
sorry, Sarah, go ahead. Or Kristin, sorry.
well, I also cannot get past Achilles' treatment towards Briseis.
Yeah.
And I'm so sorry if I say all the names. I probably say them all wrong. But like the fact that he did not care about what happened to her, and I feel like that showed a lot of his true colors.
Well, and it showed it when she said, like, the best man will die. Remember? And it wasn't Achilles for that reason. I think that was
it Patroclus? Yeah. Okay, I thought it was. Yeah.
And I was like, yes.
Yeah. Well, no, I think that was kind of the moment where really disenchanted Patroclus, or like where he was really let down.
Well, even just in like the minor actions surrounding some of the side characters too, like how Briseis, how she expressed romantic interest in Patroclus, and Achilles lost his head about it. And I'm like, well, you have a child, first of all, with somebody else, but we'll get into that. It's a whole thing. Yeah. But regardless, it's like I felt like everything that he did was justified, but then somebody would do something in like the same kind of vein, and he would like every time he said, we're I'm not joining this war because of his pride. I'm like, but that's what you're doing though. But okay. I think prideful. But like Angela was saying too, like in the time period, I don't think he's an irredeemable character. Like I could understand his thought process, but then it was a little frustrating when he claimed how much he loved Patroclus, but dismissed everything he was begging him to do, like even just showing mercy to people.
I actually have like a note I wrote because I was going to ask too, because I listened to this whole thing on audio. So I'm curious I want to ask you guys in a minute what it was like reading it, if it was better or worse, because it was very lyrical and beautiful to hear. But I wrote down what you were saying, Ysenia. I put the quote from her, "You care more for him in death than in life." And then I wrote, "The truth."
Yeah.
Like she really did. He lost his mind in death. But then when he was alive, he didn't even care about him anymore hardly at the end.
I don't know. He was jealous about the relationship with Briseis. Briseis? Did I say that right? Briseis, thank you. I also listened to it on audiobook, so I should be able to pronounce these names. But I don't think he forbid it, did he? And he did say, like, he did say, like, he wished, like, Patroclus could tell that he wasn't happy with it, but Achilles knew that he couldn't say anything, or that he was trying to, like, be reasonable about it, I guess. And he didn't forbid Achilles from seeing Briseis or from even having a child with Briseis.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with that part. I'm referring to like all the other ways he treated Patroclus and everyone else. Like he never listened to him anymore. Every time he was not great treating him that way.
No, I don't think he was a great guy by any means. I just think he was caught up in like the expectations of his role and in like fulfilling his destiny. And I guess he was selfish.
And I think that the fact that you can play beautiful music and like have like a possessive love for someone doesn't really redeem the fact that you would let an entire army of people die whenever you alone could save them. But I do want to, I don't know if you'd call this playing devil's advocate, I do want to talk about how much of Achilles' actions were actually probably influenced by the fates and the gods, and even like his personality and his reaction to things. Like there was this destiny already that Achilles was going to die in war, and I mean in mythology, right? The gods would have kind of already directed how that would have turned out. So like his choices and reactions to things may have been like planned from the gods and not really from him. I don't know.
That's a question. Did you ever tell us why it's called the Song of Achilles?
Oh, I don't know. I just thought we could talk about it.
Wait, Sara, you know, don't
said
you?
That they know why.
I think Sara knows.
Okay.
I looked it up, and apparently, like, the Iliad means, like, the ode or the song or something like that. So it goes back to, like, the original meaning of the word, like, the Iliad. And so she said that she was really torn between calling it the Song of Achilles versus, like, the armor of Achilles or the battle. And she just decided as that to, like, I guess to play on words, but like to give an ode to the ode, like to the actual like meaning of like the Iliad. I think it's like the song of something is the meaning, and it comes from the derivation of the Iliad.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Have any of you guys read the Iliad?
I've read the Odyssey.
I tried.
I've never read it all the way through. But like for classes and things like that, especially in university, like one of my professors was just obsessed with like Homer, Greek mythology. So I was like, okay, we'll give this a try. But no, but now after this, I'm kind of this. I was a little scared to pick this up because I was
Totally.
like, oh, I don't know. But it was so accessible, which I'm sure we'll talk about too. But now it kind of makes me want to pick up.
Yeah, I think if I wouldn't read it cover to cover, but I'd like dip in and out of different, like read different stories, especially the ones connected to this.
What Madeline Miller, like the author, what she sort of suggests is to listen to it on audiobook, because apparently the Iliad is sort of, or it's sort of like a collection of like verbal like stories through times or songs through time. And so she was saying that if you're going to like consume it in any sort of way, to listen to it for audiobook, and she said that's one of the most like poetic, beautiful ways to like access it. So I think I'm going to try and listen to the audiobook, but this might be like a lifelong project.
Right.
I know, Kristin, you've read it. How, like, what? I've tried so many times and then I just can't.
Wait, I read the Odyssey. I did read pieces of the Iliad in
I see. Yeah.
And the Odyssey I found very readable for me. But the Iliad may be different. I don't know.
I think it just depends which translation you get, because some of the translations can be really accessible and then some of them aren't. But if you get a newer translation, and take it slowly, or maybe you like don't plan to read the whole thing all at once. I don't know. I have never read the Iliad, so.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and jump into what was the most shocking part of the book for you? We're gonna cover a lot here, so.
Can I go?
Yeah.
Okay, I think the most shocking part for me, not in terms of like plot twist or anything, but just like in visceral reaction, was when I can't remember, was it Menelaus or one of the kings sacrificed his daughter to bring back the winds so that they could sail to Troy, and like she came under the pretext of being married to Achilles, and then they just slaughtered her there. And like that shocked me. I didn't know that mist. I didn't see it coming, and I think also like that was before Achilles had been to war, and like the blood splattered across his face, and he was really disturbed by it. So like in that moment, Achilles seems like a victim, and Patroclus goes to Odysseus and says like, what the hell? What did you just let happen? And but then like from that point on, you sort of see the roles reverse. Like in that moment, Achilles seems like a victim of this violence, and then he obviously goes on to perpetrate a whole bunch of similar violence. So yeah.
That I'll second that. That shocked me, but also just the whole chapter centered around us finding out Achilles was undercover. I was I forgot this was a thing. I was like, what is going on?
Wait, what did you say? Sorry.
When he was in the dress.
Oh my God, yeah. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
I felt so disoriented reading that like little part, because I was like, wait, what am I missing? I was like, what?
But then Patroclus was like, Achilles, and like went and like hugged or whatever. I was like, hey, take it down. Like there's probably a reason why he's not looking like himself right now.
Okay, come on.
Yeah. Well, I know a part that shocked me and Angela a lot, or at least like I couldn't believe it when it happened. Whenever Patroclus slept with Achilles' wife.
That was weird. Why did
I had to re-listen to it? I'm like, is this did I was like, I had to have heard this wrong.
Yeah.
And I looked into it, and the only thing that it talks about is because he felt bad for her. Like he pitied her because he couldn't imagine what it would be like to love Achilles so much and then not have it in return. And I'm like, so that's not a good enough reason to do that? What? And then and then I remember at the end they were like, and she looked at me and she didn't find what she was looking for. It was disappointing and stuff. And I'm like, and then I was wondering, like, they never address if he tells Achilles or anything, like nothing. It was
they
just
never spoken about it again.
Cool.
I kept expecting it to come up, but it never did.
Yeah, it never came up. I don't know if he did or didn't. And like, also, why did he do it in the first? That was the weirdest.
I thought that was weird too. I kind of think though that like, I kind of think there's something because she asked him to. And then he just did it. Like he didn't want to. She asked him to, and he didn't really like push back very hard. And then he did it. So I think there is something in like she was a princess and he had to do what she asked. That's the only way I can think about it. But I think there was a lot of that in like a lot of people. Like status was really important, and you really didn't control your actions. Like the people who are above your status above you did. But yeah, I thought that part was really weird too.
Well, I didn't need the part about how he felt aroused while doing it though. And I don't think that he should have kept that from Achilles. Like this whole thing is about the love between Patroclus and Achilles, and yet he sleeps with Achilles' wife and then never tells him and keeps this huge secret.
I actually thought that, like, okay, my brain going through, like, I read mysteries and things like that. This is what I thought was going to happen. I thought that she was lying about being pregnant and she was seducing Patroclus so that he would get her pregnant so that then she would not be caught that she was lying and then she could say she had Achilles' baby. But that didn't happen because he said, "Oh, I saw her pregnant belly." So I was like, "That would have been."
That's what I
thought too. Yeah. And then it kept talking about her swelling belly, and I was like, "Oh, well, I can't even justify this right now."
What's the reason?
Okay, I want to pause for a minute so we can address some comments. So we were talking about like things that surprised us and shocked us, and Kristin said nothing shocked me. Like that. Fair enough.
But then she has one that did surprise her though.
Bridget said she didn't know much about Achilles beforehand. So yeah, I can imagine like a lot of it would shock you if you hadn't heard the story before. And then, Kristin was surprised. She says, I was surprised when Agamemnon suggested marriage because I thought Achilles was already married to what's-her-face with the baby. Yeah.
I think they said I think Agamemnon didn't know. And then Odysseus said, like, just don't mention that you're already married.
And then John, hello. Hello from Australia.
Ooh.
Nice. And Emily, hello.
Hey, Emily. Me and Emily were reading this too, kind of like a buddy read with this as well. So we would check in. And yeah, I'm so happy you're here, Emily.
Nice. I hope you enjoyed the book, Emily. I hope I hope it didn't shock you too much.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So any other big shocking part we want to discuss?
Somebody brought up in the comments, I don't remember who it was, but about Achilles' mom. And I thought that is an interesting subject in general because her character was unique and then also played a unique both hands-on and hands-off role, I felt.
Okay, so Thetis. Is that how you say her name? Thetis?
Thetis?
Yeah, Thetis? Okay.
Yep.
I heard them say Thetis, like in the interview that they had with her. She said that there's like multiple ways to pronounce these names, and like some of them are just like English sounding versions of their names, and yeah. So there's different ways of saying their names, for sure.
All right. So would you say that Thetis is like mom of the year material?
For Achilles, she thinks she is because she's trying to get his legacy and godlyhood.
I think I don't I think it's kind of interesting because she was like chased down and raped by Achilles' father, but then at the beginning of the book, like Achilles' father, it seems like more sympathetic towards him than her. But then I read the background myth that the fates had predicted that her son would be more powerful than his father. So the gods didn't want her to marry another god because her son would be born to be more powerful than the gods. So they wanted her to be taken by a mortal. And so sort of arranged her to be like taken by, I don't even remember Achilles' father's name. So yeah, she's, what was it?
Peneleus or Penelena?
Yeah. So anyway, she's kind of interesting. And she raises Achilles' son, who ends up being a terrible person. So the father protects Achilles for doesn't allow the mother to take Achilles and raise him in the underwater world or wherever. But then Achilles' son does get raised by Thetis, and look how he turned out.
Yeah, I think that was kind of... Sorry, Sara. You can go.
Just for a lot of the book, I was so over her. Like, whenever she would come in, I was like, oh my God, she's here again. Like, and then I think it was Kristin who said, like, her voice in the audiobook is so creepy. Like, it really is. And I couldn't really, appreciate where she was coming from for a lot of the book. But again, the interview that I saw, the author describes how, Laura said, how Thetis was, essentially, raped and sort of directed by those sort of things. And you kind of, I think towards the end, I think that what made me sort of be okay with things is the resolution between her and Patroclus, and how they could sort of see eye to eye and remembering Achilles. And I thought that was actually really beautifully done.
But I'm talking a lot, but while Achilles was alive, it was almost like, I guess she tried to protect him and tried to prevent the unfolding of his destiny and everything. But I feel like she didn't like Patroclus, maybe because she foresaw the way that Achilles was going to die. But also I feel like Patroclus was the one redeeming thing about Achilles, his one area where he was kind and selfless. And
Patroclus Patroclus represents mortality too, and her being raped, she was raped by mortals, so she has a very strong feeling and opinion towards mortals, and Patroclus really represents that mortality versus the inhumanity or immortality of the gods.
I don't know.
I'm not saying that I agree with her, but that's because I can understand that.
Yeah. I mean,
part of it.
Aside from the blatant homophobia that she had against them, I think maybe Patroclus reminded her of that her son isn't invincible, that her son doesn't have weaknesses and is immortal, which is something that she loathed in her son from the beginning, just based on how he even came to be in the first place. So, I mean, I just love these characters because it's so tough. There's no definitive, I love this character or I hate this character. But to me, that's how in my head I wasn't justifying her actions, but I could understand why she had some animosity.
I love how the gods are portrayed. They're so without morals and so just selfish and childish in a way, but then so powerful.
Yeah.
Do you think that it was homophobia that was like the reason she didn't like Patroclus, or does it? Because that's what I thought at first as well. But like, how big of a role do you think that played?
I think that was like Chiron's like explanation for why she felt that way. So I felt that it was the homophobia initially, but like the more I went on with it, I was like, this is deeper. Like this is something else.
The mortality thing was a huge part of it. He was always saying, he's mortal, that mortal, right? But
yeah, and that's the impression that I got.
On the
like mortal phobia.
Yeah.
I thought it was because the comment had been talking about how she was meddling with the gods, and she kept being like, well, I tried to talk to them about this and this, and this is what we heard. And I kept getting the impression that it wasn't necessarily, well, I guess it was Patroclus, but because of who he is as a person, like he is, and if they do have foresight to see what's going to happen, which clearly some of them do, they were saying like, hey, once Hector dies and everything. So like, if she knew that that was the case, I almost wonder if she knew that it was going to be because of Patroclus, which meant it was going to lead to her son's death too. And I almost felt like, I don't know, I didn't really, a little bit of the homophobia, but I felt like it was almost like because she saw how strong their bond was and how much they loved each other. And she was like, well, everything is going to be risked for this immortal, like we can't, like, I'm not going to let this happen to my son. And it almost felt like almost like a testament to me of Patroclus's strength of character and like what he was going to do and their bond and their love. And she wanted to stop it because, again, we're talking about like destinies and legacies. And, I felt like that was part of it too.
Yeah, it was definitely, I don't think that was like the sole reason, but it was definitely the catalyst and it was the easy scapegoat. But she was definitely threatened by their relationship because with Patroclus, that was the only time that Achilles had ever let his guard down with anything or with anybody. And he wasn't solely focused, until they got to the war anyway, he wasn't solely focused on his legacy at the time. If that makes sense. I don't know. That's just how I took it. I don't know. But.
It does. And Emily said, she was talking about how like they were super cutthroat. And I kind of want to touch on that because like when we see how Thetis has the primary role in raising Achilles' son, like she produces a child that is intensely cutthroat, like this is the product of being raised by a god who cares solely about like glory and war and being like glory, right? And whereas I think it kind of highlights like the beauty of humanity, like in contrast with like that, because being raised by the father produces a nice balance in Achilles, but I think it's Achilles' like godlike nature that wins out in the end and brings out all of these negative qualities and his pride. I mean, anytime you talk about Greek myths, you have to talk about hubris, right? And hubris is such a gigantic part of this novel. Mention that as well.
Yeah, because I guess like every mortal at the end of the day has to face death, like no matter what your status is, no matter if you're a king or a slave, or everybody like faces death at the end. And so everybody like has to bow to that and submit to that. But then the immortals don't have to, and they just have this kind of like unshackled power. Yeah.
So you guys want to talk about some prideful men?
Can we have a moment to be happy, or not? Well, I'm happy, but to fangirl over Patroclus. It's like we keep talking about Achilles, but Patroclus is like the main character technically, and like he's so precious.
He's my shining star.
Honestly, like anything could happen in the book, and just because it's told from Patroclus' perspective, I would have enjoyed it because like that sort of like sidekick, like loyal sidekick character could like works for me every time. I can't read it enough, but yeah.
I was so in one of my favorite parts about like the later like bit of it was when he was sort of using like the teachings from Chiron, like with medicine, and using it and applying it to war. And I thought, like, did Chiron know about this like the whole time? Was he just like prepping him for like finding the like delicate like baby ear mushrooms? Like, I was so taken aback by that line. I was like, what? This like sticks out in my mind. And I love that he was able to sort of like use that. In my mind, I was like you guys really need a good medical team here. There's like infection everywhere. People are putting spears in you. Like, and I was like, Patroclus has to save you all. So
Can I bring one thing up quickly? So when Patroclus he can never imagine himself killing, and when he goes into battle, he doesn't actually kill anyone, and it sounds like he's just like kind of on the sidelines. But when he puts on Achilles' armor and rides out into the battle, suddenly, like when he has that status and when he's like perceived as being Achilles, suddenly like he can just like killing people left, right, and center with with spears. I don't know, I'm exaggerating a bit, but suddenly like when he puts on that, like when he's put into that role, suddenly he can kill.
I was sort of questioning a little bit. I don't think that this was implied whatsoever in the book, but I just kind of was thinking in my mind, I'm like, he really went from like that to like that just like by having the armor. So I was like, is there like some godlike stuff in the armor that he's like feeding off of? Because I'm like, he can't just like get that competence out of just like just trying to step up to Achilles, who's like the greatest warrior of all time. So I was like, maybe there's like a little bit of magic in there, but it's not implied at all. That's just how I want to think about it because it doesn't make sense to me otherwise.
Well, Hephaestus does. The god Hephaestus does make the armor. Sorry, keep going. That's all I was gonna say.
Well, I was just gonna say that, like, that's what I thought too. I was like, okay, is this a dream sequence? Like, what's going on? But
yeah, I thought it was a dream too.
Yeah,
like, what?
The same argument that we made for Achilles earlier about how he just put so much stock into his the word is escaping me, but his whole path or whatever. Yeah. Words are hard, but the same was said about Patroclus, though. Like how from when he was a young child, you are never going to amount to anything in battle. You aren't strong enough. You aren't capable, and so he probably fed into that too. Of I'm unworthy when it comes to fighting, and then he realized like maybe there's a little more in me than I thought, but. The whole thing, I was just kind of, and then he takes down one of the strongest Trojans. I'm like, okay.
Like, yeah, I know. I was like, come on.
That's why I got the impression that it was because it's kind of like do or die time. Like because another thing that I loved about him, also the medicine, like you were talking about, was so wonderful, but also his relationship with all of the women who were, I guess, like they were like refugees or prisoners of war, essentially. And he kind of like taught them, took them in, like, and to me, they were talking about how they were taking the ships, and I think that was the first person he killed, was like someone who was trying to take their ships and stuff, and he knew that if this happened, they were done for. They were all gonna die and get slaughtered. So like the impression that I got from it was like he was doing everything that he possibly could, that adrenaline, that fear, that like protectiveness, to make sure that he did whatever he could that it couldn't happen, because he wasn't supposed to. He was supposed to just stand there, but then he saw like the ships were going to get taken away. He was like, I have to do something or else everyone I love and care about is going to die. And
he was doing Achilles' job, like as Achilles was supposed to be a protector of his army, and he wasn't doing his job, so Patroclus stepped up. Sorry, Kristin, go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's just, but he didn't need to climb the walls of Troy. And like, so like, this is like my least favorite part of the book, is whenever Patroclus puts on Achilles' armor, because I think it's so out of character. I feel like Patroclus would have listened to Achilles and really like honored what he told him about stay safe, stay in the carriage. But I can understand what you said, Angela, about like wanting to protect like the people who were left. But what I never understand is why he got like so full of this bloodlust or something that he suddenly was like, I'm gonna take down all of Troy and climb the wall of Troy. Like that for me seemed like unnecessary and not in character. I don't know. What do you think?
Do you think it's because he lost faith that Achilles would do it? Like, I feel like it was almost like he's a changed person. I have to do this because he's not going to do it.
But I think
that's just how I felt.
I also agree, but I also think it's something about like everyone plays, everyone has to play their part. And in a way, that's why like I didn't completely hate Achilles, because he was like, I think in the Greek myths, they had a different sense of like personal freedom. And I think people very much believed in like you were at the hands of the fates, and like a lot of these characters, even the hero like Odysseus, who we should talk about at some point because I really like Odysseus. But like he's the hero of the Odyssey, but he's not like a morally upstanding hero. Like his faults or his hubris or whatever results in the death of his men like so many times throughout the book, throughout the Odyssey and the Iliad. So it's almost like everybody needs to play, like it's almost as if like personal will or like doesn't come into it. Everyone has to play their role, and Achilles wasn't playing his, so Patroclus did it for him. But that doesn't like, I agree with Kristin, because that doesn't make sense in the way like that we think about like free will, like in the modern day. Like it doesn't make sense that Patroclus would do this. It doesn't make sense like with what we know about his character and everything. So the only way I can understand it is like someone had to play this role that was meant for Achilles, and so Patroclus took it up. But like it's not satisfactory to me either.
I completely agree with Angela, actually. But I do see the argument that you and Kristin pose, Laura, just because it's like it was so out of character. But I do think that he just knew that, even just, I don't know if you guys caught this, but it was when the war had already kicked off, but we weren't like in the thick of it yet. And Patroclus would walk through the camp with Achilles and knew everybody's names, and knew their stories and knew their families and all of these things. And Achilles made a comment like, "Oh, you know all these people," and Patroclus is like, "Yeah, don't you?" And Achilles said, "No, it's easier when they just know my name." So, I felt like what Patroclus was fighting for, it had nothing to do with him personally. So that's also why I do think it was kind of in character for him to lay down on the sword to save all these people,
to save the people who he knew as opposed to the people who were anonymous to him.
Yeah.
I don't know, but then I guess was it Apollo who was at the top of the wall of Troy, and when Patroclus climbed to the top, he'd like pick him up and throw him down, and then he'd climb up again, and and he picked him up and threw him down. I feel like that was another sign that it was like the gods intervening and causing it, like having Apollo up there, like literally touching Patroclus. I don't know. I feel like with Laura, this was like a predetermined thing, and so it made it feel like unfair and made me so mad at the gods, and it was an ending that I don't think should have happened. So
see, that's why this is interesting, because I felt the exact opposite way. Like I thought that the gods were intervening because Patroclus was ruining the plan. Like because if you remember, he's not. Like, I agree with the comment. He is a precious cinnamon roll, but he's not all just that. Remember, he killed a guy. And I mean, I know he didn't intend to when he was a kid. He just like shoved him, but like he did. And then later on, like he's not like, you know, he didn't make any friends. He was kind of, when he was younger, like he didn't make any friends. He was kind of weak. And she'd brought up before about how his childhood, he was always told like, you're not good enough, but he kind of did have the strength. Like that's what Achilles kind of saw in him. Mm-hmm. So it's like, to me, like it was perfectly in character that he's like, hey, I'm going to stand up and fight for this. And I'm going to do what my love is not doing, unfortunately. And that's why I thought like him standing up there and throwing him down repeatedly, like it was like, no, you're not supposed to be here. This is not supposed to happen. Go away. And like that's why I like felt that the whole point of the story was their love, but also like his heroics himself, like him coming into his own like self-separate from Achilles, because most of his life was just like all about following him. He to find him everywhere he went, and then now he's like, okay, this isn't working out the way I wanted it to, but I can try to do what I can do to help, you know. What's interesting is that we all have different interpretations of things sometimes.
Yeah, well, it's like the interesting parts of the stories are the ways that the characters don't live up to their destiny or don't live up to their fate, and the way they do something unexpected. And that's like what makes things interesting. The stories interesting to read about is like those moments of, wait, this isn't supposed to happen.
I had like some intense moments of frustration during this book. And it's not necessarily Madeline Miller, because like she's going off the Iliad. So like there are things that she has to have happen. Like Patroclus needs to have the armor, like Achilles has to die and that sort of thing. But I was just like so over the fact that like, I get that this is a love story, but like how many freaking people need to die like during this like love story and this whole like war for Helen? I'm just like, oh my God, like get over yourselves. Like this does not justify the means to anything. So the only way that I kind of felt okay with it was just like the gods are freaking crazy. Like they have no moral compass. They're just kind of like picking on like ways to have sacrifices to suffice themselves and like to make like mortals just combat each other. Because I was like, this whole thing is like pointless. Sorry. But I was like, this is like all pointless. This war is pointless. And at the end we have like at the end we just like have a love story. I'm just like, come on, like why are so many people like having to die for like what? And Achilles just like freaking so obsessed with his pride. I'm just like, I ship you guys, but I don't ship you that much. Come on, like this is like so like extra. I can't.
Yeah, it's like Kristin said, nothing's fair. It's not fair.
Yeah, it was just so unfair and unjust to just like what?
But
like
I do think that's in the original myths, because like the heroes like
saying, like she had to go based off of this, but I'm like,
but even the heroes like I was saying earlier, Odysseus, like he is the hero, like he's the leader, that's his role. He doesn't, like, I think in the modern day we have the sense that someone has to earn or deserve their role, but in the Odyssey or the Iliad, that's just their role and they play it, and then stuff happens and it's not fair. I don't like, it's the person who deserves to be leader isn't leader, you know, it's just the person who's fated to be leader.
Yeah, which is just like, oh my gosh. Like, I just can't with that part of it. I'm like, there's just so much needless suffering. And like, what even happened to Helen? Did they get her? Like, what? Like, what the frick was the whole point of that? Like, where is she? Did she run off on her own free will? Or did she get, like, what the heck? Like, Helen, what?
Yeah, what does happen?
Helen is the true villain of everything.
I think there's the whole bunch. There's the Trojan horse thing that happens. And then...
like Odysseus has like his like day with the Trojan horse or whatever, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't even with Odysseus. I cannot with Odysseus. cannot with him. Like I did kind of like him for parts of this quite a bit, but you know, I just frick Odysseus.
I really like Odysseus, not like as a person, but as a character. Like in
so
both
cunning.
Circe, he's just like, yeah, he's so like, yeah. I don't get him, but I find him interesting in both Circe and the Song of Achilles. And I thought he was pretty consistent between the two books, actually.
He was.
Yeah.
He was. Emily, I've been holding that in, keeping that in.
Let it out, Sara.
So if we were in English class in college right now, we would be analyzing Achilles and talking about how his tragic flaw affected his actions. So if you had to assign like a tragic flaw to Achilles, what would you say that is?
Pride.
Yeah. Hubris.
Doesn't Patroclus actually tell him that at one point? Like, your hubris is the one that is causing these problems? Because he was trying to point out how hypocritical he was, that the one guy, he was like, oh, like, I think Ysenia said, like, oh, your pride is the one that is messing everything up. And Patroclus is like, mirror much? Like, look in the mirror. Like, you're doing it too.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not the only one, because there's also,
Agamemnon.
Yeah, his pride as well, refusing to apologize, and then all of the lives who are lost in the process because of the pride of these prideful men. And how many times have we seen this in history?
Wait, wasn't that what we said? I was either saying that to someone or to you, Kristin, that like, it's just fascinating how you see a similar one. Has anybody read or heard of the Epic of Gilgamesh?
I've heard of it.
It's like the oldest story that we have. It was from ancient Mesopotamia, and it was written on these tablets, and we don't have all of them, but we found enough to be able to put together a story. And it's so similar. Enkidu and Gilgamesh, the same thing about like a bond and about mortality and about your legacy. And it's so similar to this book. I was like, well, this could be Gilgamesh and Enkidu for a part of it. And it's like, that was like the oldest story that we have. That was from ancient Mesopotamia, like Uruk, like one of the first civilizations. And now we're still seeing the same thing to this day with prideful people and with, all of it. And it's just so fascinating, sad, but realistic. Like, so much is just, it's humans. That's humanity. Exactly. That's how we are. That's how we will probably always be. That's just how it is. And it's so interesting that it is the same story, just which century are you in,
Yeah. But sorry.
Go ahead, Kristin.
No, Laura, you're okay.
No, I haven't formulated my thought anyway. Go ahead.
Well, it's just that, aren't we supposed to learn from stories? Like, I just wish that we could learn, because I just feel like all of these needless deaths or even sufferings that still happen, like in the United States, even, like, it just is so infuriating. Like, why can we not look at history and read stories and learn and not make these same mistakes?
And I think we had like a similar discussion for one of the other books about just like history just continuously repeating itself. I think we talked about that during Fahrenheit 451 or something like that, and sort of saw the similarities, and we were like, oh my gosh, this was written in like however many years ago. And it's like, well, the Iliad was written how many years ago, and we're still seeing this stuff? Like Mesopotamia too, like what?
Well, so this goes back to the whole concept of you aren't the villain in your own story in your eyes. So like Achilles truly didn't realize how prideful he was being, in my opinion. So I think that's why it sucks, but like that's why history repeats itself so often, is because nobody ever wants to view themselves as like the villain or the reason behind all of these conflicts happening. Your own story.
Do you think that when you take or are put into a position of power, that corrupts you, and then you become like prideful and or do you think it's the other way around? Do you think people with those characteristics rise to positions of power? Because I sort of saw it as like if Achilles had maybe been born into Patroclus's situation, would he have turned out like, would he have been as kind of ruthless?
Nature and nurture. Is that what you mean?
I guess that's what it is.
I always heard it's a combo of both, I feel like. Yeah.
So, okay, can we move on to another question I'm kind of curious about?
Yeah.
Okay, so the end of the book is all about how Patroclus wants Achilles to be remembered and like his legacy. And he doesn't want Achilles to be remembered as like this ruthless villain type of character. And so like we have history between us and Achilles now, and we can think about how he's remembered today. So like, how do you guys picture Achilles in your mind? Like before you read the book, I guess, like, was he this bad villain or was he a hero?
I just thought about his heel. I don't know.
I always thought of him as just like this incredibly like powerful individual, but even the most powerful individual has their point of weakness. So that's what I just thought about him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's a hero, but if you look at a lot of like, even like if you go watch a superhero movie today, like the type of characters that the type of heroes that we have in modern storytelling, like Angela said, it hasn't come that far from, it's still like the same sort of hero that they had back then. And like, if you were to look at any of the superheroes, they're like, they kill like hundreds of people throughout the course of an action film, you know? And I don't see Achilles' story of being any different, except that Madeline Miller like gives us maybe a wider perspective where we don't only see Achilles as a hero, but I think as he was written, like he was a hero. We saw him from the perspective of that perspective.
Hi, thank you for joining us. And I think that this is a good point, right? Like I kind of thought on the same lines, like that Achilles is kind of like, I pictured him in the same line as Hercules, like just like a really strong, like gladiator type of guy.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I just think it's interesting that I didn't really have that negative connotation either. He wasn't really, I mean, I guess he was a hero of war, but I never imagined he had a softer side too. Like I never knew about Patroclus or about his musical talent. Okay.
Can we look at the comment that says, I used to think of him as a hyper masculine ideal? Because do you think like some of these characters, that's what they were for? They were there to like model like traits that society wanted people to embody or that you were supposed to aspire to?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Strong warrior. I do.
Alan's here.
Oh, hello. The Greek heroes like Achilles and Hercules are supposed to have big emotions. The Greeks had big rage, but also big crying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
But I thought that the ending, what the Thetis did to his memorial was really, I don't know if it was super in character with Thetis. I kind of didn't expect her to ever give in, but maybe it was just giving up or something. But yeah, I thought that was really neat how they were able to fix that. And it was so sad to like read it from Patroclus's point of view when he's just like, help me, like I'm here. Like, yeah, I thought that the ending was really interesting about how, because as we've talked about how like kind of, I mean, would you call Thetis cutthroat too? She's quite
Yeah.
Cold.
Very cold.
Yeah.
Especially that voice. Oh, if anybody listens to the audiobook,
Oh
that
my
voice
God.
would get me every time. I was like, ooh. But I don't know. Why do we think that she kind of softened at the end? Was it just to give us a good happy ending, or do you think it was what she would have done?
I'm sorry, I have an idea, but I'll go quickly and then someone else can talk. But
No, you're fine.
okay, so I kind of think, and sometimes
Ysenia.
I try to fit things into like my idea. I don't know if it fits or not, but I think that like our idea, like we make our heroes as like kind of examples of traits that we admire or that we want to embody or that we want our children to embody are sort of like examples and of like the things that are admired by our traits that are admired by our society. So I think like these big acts of bravery and of heroism and of this like warrior character and sort of this like stoic warrior persona has like traditionally always been like what a hero is. But I think Madeline Miller like takes that and then takes the original myths and then adds to it the things that we've now come to like admire in modern society. So like like loyalty, and I guess that's always been a positive trait, but like the sort of vulnerability that like we now want in modern day want to see in our heroes. So she like takes these old heroes and then imagines this extra side that a modern audience wants to see in their heroes. And so when Thetis, coming back to that, when Thetis adds Patroclus's name to the memorial, it's almost like she's writing down in history, or the people that are remembered by history are not only like the traditional heroes, but also someone like Patroclus, who wasn't like physically strong, but like maybe more like morally upstanding, and sort of like writing him into history, that we have now eventually like come to admire those traits as we would like Achilles's traits. So anyway, that's it.
I love that, Laura. You're so right. Because Patroclus, he is the true hero, isn't he? I mean, the best of the Greeks.
And and now I think like we would think of Patroclus as someone more admirable than Achilles in a lot of ways. And so like to add him to the memorial is almost to like say that he was as valuable as Achilles, or that his,
I have a question. Who was your favorite character? Because by far mine was Chiron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what can you say negatively about him? He's like this teacher. He has so much wisdom. He's like the teacher who's like teaching them how to, like so many skills and how to be like morally like good. And he protects them, and he's just like a gem. I don't think that there's anything bad I can say about him. And even giving the spear, and yeah.
Yeah.
Now he's just like, who are you think you guys are fooling? Like, I know you guys love each other. Get out of here.
Yeah. I thought he was so amazing. Like, loved him so much. I wanted more of him in the book.
Yeah.
He influenced a lot of the gods too. Like he was a tutor to, or maybe, I don't know if it was a god, but like other heroes in Greek history.
Yes.
Okay.
I agree with a lot of these comments.
I was about to say, I want to address some more comments. So let me see. Alan said, it's a modern thing that crying and emotions are not masculine, and they were very masculine in the ancient Greek world. I do know there was a huge focus on like catharsis, like going through like an emotional purging by the time you finish a work too. That was big. So catharsis is one of my favorite words, so I had to throw that in.
Big tragedies, yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing that I say.
True.
Am I wrong?
No. Oh, this is talking about Thetis. I think she got to know Patroclus in a way she didn't get a chance to before because she was so against him. They sort of were both stuck because Achilles was dead and she finally accepted him. Because Patroclus was the only bridge left between Thetis and her son at that point. And Patroclus had all of these memories of Achilles that Thetis had no access to. And her whole life, I think Thetis had to just value she just valued like war and rage. And so finally she was able to see this softer side of her son, and maybe through those memories was able to value.
What do you think she wanted from Achilles? Because that wasn't really clear to me. Like, did she want him to fulfill his destiny and become this great warrior? Because then she hid him away on the island, tried to like protect him from, like, what did she want from him?
Did she try like
what happened
from going to Troy?
Sorry, one more time.
Did Thetis try and keep Achilles from going to Troy, or am I remembering that wrong?
No, she did. She didn't want him to go to war in Troy.
Yeah. Don't know.
silly gods? I don't know.
Sorry, I was reading the
Oh
comments.
my God.
Yeah, the gods are. I thought that they did a good job with, like, as we were saying, silly gods, like, because they did bring up even, and it was written very well too, about how the gods are not like mortals, you know, and like, and because as we were talking about, and they were saying, is like gods are a symbol for like the things that we admire or want to be, but like, yeah, the gods are not like us. And Thetis was a good example of that, because we think of her as like heartless, but she's like, this is, you know, I don't know how I'm ending that.
She kind of wants Achilles for herself. Like she's, but like, does she want him to be happy, or like,
I don't think so.
Or does she even think that far? Does she just like want to keep him as her pet?
I think she couldn't understand that he could be happy beyond just fulfilling his destiny.
Yeah,
I think that's like where the disconnect was. And I think she realized after all the grief that she saw her son go through when Patroclus was killed, like she realized, oh, this weighed heavily on him. And even if he fulfilled his destiny, it's still not going to be enough. That's how I took it. So I think that's why she finally came to terms with, you're okay. you're okay, Patroclus.
Do you know what makes this more tragic is that Achilles could have decided he didn't want glory or to be remembered. And like that was all it would have taken. And then he could have just stayed with Patroclus, like, and been happy.
Addresses that too, and that's just what I kept thinking of when I was reading. Like, if I don't know, if he would have chosen something else, you know, it didn't have to go the way it did.
Patroclus even said like it wouldn't matter to me either way. Like it wouldn't have. But it wasn't enough, because I think for the mortals, that was their only path to immortality, was through like deeds that were worthy of writing down and of retelling. And so that to him was the only way of like making himself immortal. And then when he dies, I guess Thetis realizes kind of like are these like acts of war his only legacy? Yeah, I don't know.
But it's one of those examples of love, I guess, not being enough. Because for Achilles, it wasn't enough to just love Patroclus and be with him.
I mean, like, I know the answer to like what she wanted, but do you think ultimately, like, if Achilles had was able to retrospectively look at what happened, would he still decide what he decided?
Because then wouldn't it come at the cost of a lot of lives in the war that he wasn't helping fight in?
It's so hard to say, because I know, like, Patroclus wouldn't have chosen the way that Achilles chooses, and at the end we're hearing it from Patroclus' perspective, and so he's regretful that Achilles only, like, he doesn't want Achilles to be remembered only for his acts of war. Like, he wants him to be remembered for returning Hector's body, and for, like, sheltering those women, and for these other things that weren't written, like, in his destiny. But I don't know what Achilles would have wanted. Like, would he have been satisfied with the legacy that he left?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want
I mean, I could see the.
there's like so much to talk about. We could go on like for ages, but do you want to talk about a few more things? Like, are there some topics you feel like we really have to discuss, or do you want to go ahead and say it's a top shelf read? Like, what are you guys thinking?
I think we did talk about Odysseus, right? Why do I always picture him as George Clooney? Every time, like, it threw out. I don't understand what that's about. Just me? Yeah.
I can kind of see it.
The whole time I just kept thinking that, and I was just like, Odysseus, just go away.
Wily Odysseus.
And we've got some more comments too.
Yeah.
Okay. Miller has made these guys way more nuanced. Very true. We can't even like process everything. There's so many difficult questions. Achilles lived to fulfill his prophecy that he would live a brief but glorious life. Achilles lived for war. I think he probably wouldn't have been as stubborn and gone to war instead of Patroclus, but not sure if he would give it all up.
Oh my gosh, there's a choir of dogs in my neighborhood right now. I'm sorry.
I can't hear. Don't worry.
Choir, I love it.
I can't hear them.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I did want to talk about Achilles as a father.
Was he though?
Like,
That's
no.
Like, another thing to add to the list of bad things about Achilles is that he could have stepped up and kept his son. Like, maybe he could have influenced him to turn out better. And instead, you know, we have Pyrrhus. And
Ugh.
I like how he actually believed his mom. Is like, oh, if you sleep with her, then I'll get your boyfriend. It's like,
It's like, what?
Can you remind me, why did she want him to have a child with? Why did Thetis want him to have a child with, what's her name? I need to write a character list down next time.
Well, I think to continue the bloodline, right? Or am I not?
I don't know what I said, but I also thought it was maybe like because she wanted. Wasn't it just to consummate their marriage? Like,
yeah.
I think it was just because she's the one who married them, right? Or am I remembering wrong? So, like, I think it was just.
Yeah,
And well, I don't know. This is just
so that when he was discovered, he would.
Like, oh, sorry, you're stuck.
Sorry, yeah. Okay, yeah. I remember now. Yeah.
Tricky, silly gods.
Yeah.
all right. Well, we can go ahead and discuss if this was a top shelf read for us. I came into this really confident that it was for all of us, and now I have no idea. Like, none.
Yeah, me too. I'm thrown as well. I don't know who's gonna say what.
Does anyone want to go first, or should I go first?
You go ahead.
Okay, if you're watching this with us live right now, let us know in the comments if this was a top shelf read for you. I love this book, but it's not a top shelf read for me. And I think that this is the first time it hasn't been a top shelf read for me because of just how frustrated and unhappy I was with the plot and the way that events turned out. Like, normally I wouldn't factor plot that much into it, but in this case, like, I just really did. I think that Madeline Miller's writing is beautiful, but I cannot get over the events that took place. And so it's really just the story that upsets me so much. I don't think that Patroclus should have climbed that wall. I don't think that that's in character, and that's not Madeline Miller's fault. That's just the story in general. But this is a retelling of a story, and I don't know. It just, that part infuriates me. But it's a wonderful book, and the fact that it like gets such a reaction from me, like that it makes me so angry, shows how great of a book it is. But it's just not top shelf for me.
Yeah, I will second that. It's not the very top shelf, but it's pretty high up. Like, I don't need to get on my tippy toes to reach it. You know what I mean? If I were to give it a rating, I'd give it 4 stars. It just almost felt like, I love her writing. I think it's beautiful, very poetic. And it was, like I said earlier, very accessible. For the subject matter, like I felt like I could follow and understand it perfectly. But the first half and the second half almost felt like 2 separate stories. So that's why it's not a 5-star read for me, but it's still pretty good.
It is a top shelf read for me. I'm usually the one who's like the naysayers. Fun. But yeah, I found this discussion very interesting because I wasn't frustrated by the plot. I didn't see that until you guys made me see it. But I think I wasn't expecting Achilles or Patroclus. I wasn't expecting the characters to really be like morally upstanding or to be like good guys. And so I also gave it 4 stars, but I just thoroughly enjoyed it. So I can't not put it on my top shelf. Yeah. It's partly just because I love those like sidekick kind of characters so much as well.
Oh yeah.
They just like hit a soft spot with me.
See, I'm picky. I'm really picky. Yeah, I'm gonna echo what Kristin and Ysenia said. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I really liked the audiobook. Some of the voices were odd. We talked about it in the comments a little bit in the chat, but like it was almost very soothing, her writing. It was very like lyrical. I would put it in my headphones and cook dinner, and I'd be like totally swept away with the story. And I recommend it that way. And it was a great story. Like I don't have tons of complaints except for some of the frustrating, weird plot things that would happen. But again, it's not her fault. But yeah, I don't know. I just can't. I'm picky to say something is like a 5-star. So to me, it was also a 4. I really enjoyed it, but I won't say it's a top shelf read. Sara?
Oh, it's not.
I knew it.
It's not a top shelf read, but it is. But I would still give it a high rating. How do I explain this? So, like, I would give it a high rating because I really appreciate what she's done with this. I think that it's a really good answer to the question of what could the relationship have been between Patroclus and Achilles. And I think that she does a very good job of like dissecting the Iliad and looking for explanations, like if they were only friends or like very close acquaintances, then why were their ashes like buried together? Like why was their affection towards each other so deep? So I think that this was a really cool like investigative approach to that. And I really do appreciate the book, and I would definitely recommend it to others. I have no desire to ever read it again, though. I appreciate it for what it was, and I really enjoyed it at the time, but there are books that I would definitely like read again way quicker than this one. So it's a little conflicting for me. Like I did really enjoy it, and I recommend it, and I think that it's important to acknowledge the amount of work she's done. She's brilliant. Like to me, that's pretty clear. but not on my top shelf. I would say that this one is top shelf.
Agreed.
Okay. I'll
Just
add
saying that. Yeah.
because I am interested in. Although I didn't give it 5 stars, I'm very interested in picking up her other work just because I can't get over how beautiful the writing was.
And I also like really want to read another book by her. Like,
I know.
Is she coming out with any other books?
I don't know. I was gonna like research that, but I just
She
I,
must
They
I
only
had
have the 2.
Mhm.
I think she only has
so.
the 2. And like a lot of her like education beforehand was looking into like the Greek history as well. So yeah, she's totally fascinating. I recommend like her interview. She's just so awesome.
Okay, well, there you have it. That was the live show for The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. We are still in heated discussions over what our book will be for February. Well, not really heated. We just have to decide.
We just have to decide. Yeah.
Heated, what?
I don't know why I said heated. I think I meant to say exciting discussions about the book. So anyways, we will let you guys know what our February book will be as soon as we have decided, and the time of our February live show. We'll post that on our Instagrams and Twitter and Goodreads page for you to check out so that you can join us next month as well. Woo! All right, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.